It began with a quiet, desperate sound at the door, the kind that makes you stop, listen, and somehow know a life is depending on what you do next. Out here, nothing ever knocked unless it had no other choice left. And in that moment, he had no idea that opening the door would change two lives forever. The night air pressed softly against the wooden walls of Ranger Alex's station, carrying the layered sounds of the Amazon, distant insects, rustling leaves, and the slow murmur of the river. He was sorting medical supplies when a faint, deliberate scratching broke to the rhythm of the jungle. It was not random movement or an animal brushing past. It came again, steady and purposeful, right at the door. Alex paused, listening, feeling a quiet tension settle in his chest. When he opened the door, a massive capybara stood on the porch, her body heavy with pregnancy, and her fur darkened with mud and exhaustion. One hind leg trembled, swollen and scraped raw, and yet she did not retreat. She held his gaze with a calm, searching stillness that felt less like fear and more like a silent request. Alex lowered himself slowly, keeping his movements gentle, allowing her time to decide. After a long moment, she stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the dim warmth of the station, as if she had already chosen him before arriving. Inside, the scent of antiseptic and would replace the damp earth of the forest, and she settled carefully onto the floor, her breathing deep and labored. Alex moved beside her with quiet focus, soaking a cloth and cleaning the wound while speaking in a low, steady voice, more for reassurance and instruction. She flinched once, then remained still, trusting his hands despite the sting. The closeness of the moment felt fragile and immense at the same time, a meeting between two lives that would never normally share space. As he wrapped the bandage, he noticed how her eyes followed him, alert but unafraid, as if she understood his intent. The station, usually defined by solitude, seemed to soften around them, holding a temporary calm. Outside, the jungle continued without pause, but inside there was only the rhythm of her breathing and the quiet scrape of his movements. When the treatment was finished, Alex stepped back to give her room, expecting her to retreat toward the door. Instead, she remained where she was, shifting carefully, her body tense with something deeper than injury. He realized she was conserving her strength, measuring her surroundings, and trusting this unfamiliar shelter. The realization settled slowly that she had not wandered here by chance. She had chosen the one place where help might exist, guided by instinct and necessity. Alex felt the weight of that decision pressed gently onto his shoulders, not as fear, but as responsibility. He filled a bowl with water and placed it nearby, then dimmed the lamps so the room felt calmer, less intrusive. The capybara lowered her head, finally resting, her breathing easing into a steadier rhythm. In that quiet, Alex sensed the beginning of a fragile connection, formed not through action alone, but through shared stillness and patience. By the end of the evening, he understood that caring for her would require more than a simple treatment. It would demand attention, presence, and a willingness to let the wild remain wild even within his walls. He stayed nearby, listening to quiet sounds she made as sleep slowly claimed her, aware that every small movement carried meaning. The forest would always be her true home, yet for this moment she had chosen his shelter, and that trust felt sacred. Alex settled into his chair, not as a guard but as a witness, ready to respond if needed, letting the night pass gently around them while the fragile sense of connection deepened, without words between them in calm understanding and quiet mutual respect tonight. Inside the quiet station, the rhythm of the capybara's breathing began to change, slow and deep at first, then tightening with a steady tension that Alex recognized from years of field experience. Her body shifted, muscles drawing inward, and a low tremor passed through her sides as labor quietly announced itself. Alex moved with calm intention, spreading clean straw across a shelter corner and layering soft towels to create a warm nest, careful to keep his movements gentle and unthreatening. He dimmed the lamp and stepped back, allowing instinct to lead while remaining close enough to respond if needed. The room filled with a hushed stillness, broken only by her breathing and the soft scrape of her body settling into place. Time slowed as each contraction came stronger, her form tensing and releasing with patient determination. When the moment finally arrived, the small, fragile pup slipped into the world, wet and trembling yet undeniably alive. The mother immediately turned, her exhaustion replaced by focused devotion as she licked the newborn clean, encouraging its breathing and pulling it close. Alex watched from a respectful distance, humbled by the quiet power of the scene, understanding that his role was simply to protect the space where this life could begin. Over the next days, the station transformed into a gentle sanctuary shaped by routine and trust. Each morning he refreshed water and laid out fruits and leaves gathered from nearby trails, speaking softly as he worked so the mother would recognize his presence. She remained watchful but calm, her eyes following him with growing familiarity rather than caution. The pup grew stronger with each passing day, wobbling across the floor on uncertain legs before settling against her warmth. Occasionally it ventured toward the light, sniffing curiously at the edges of the room, learning its surroundings while always returning to her side. Alex tended the healing leg with careful precision, changing bandages and checking swelling, relieved to see steady improvement. Their shared days settled into a rhythm built on patience, where trust formed through repeated, quiet moments rather than dramatic gestures. The mother began to rest more deeply, confident her young was safe, while Alex learned to move within the room without disturbing their calm. Outside, the jungle remained loud and alive, yet inside the station there existed a small, protected stillness where recovery and new life unfolded together. As strength returned to her body, she began to stand more often, testing her weight and guiding the pup to follow her short steps. Alex knew the time would come when this shelter would no longer be needed. He cleaned the room, packed away medical supplies, and watched as the pair moved with growing confidence, their bond evident in every gentle nudge and attentive glance. The decision to return them to the river felt natural, not forced, shaped by respect for their independence. He understood that his role had always been temporary, a brief presence in their story, offering safety until instinct called him home again. He paused beside the doorway, watching the filtered sunlight drift across the floor as the mother nudged her pup forward with patient assurance. The small sounds of their movement carried warmth through the quiet room, and Alex felt a quiet gratitude for the trust they had offered him without hesitation. He knew that soon the river would welcome them back with familiar scents and gentle currents, guiding their return to the wild rhythm that had shaped their lives long before his presence ever began. He simply stood there breathing slowly, holding the moment with calm respect and silent farewell. Alex walked slowly beside the capybara and her pup as they moved away from the station, the morning air cool and heavy with the scent of wet earth and river mist. The mother's steps were steady now, her injured leg fully healed, her posture calm and confident as she guided the small pup through patches of soft grass and scattered roots. The jungle stirred gently around them, alive with bird song and distant movement, yet the moment carried a quiet stillness that felt separate from the world beyond it. When they reached the riverbank, she paused, lifting her head as if recognizing the familiar sounds and smells that mark home. The pup hesitated at the water's edge, then followed as she stepped forward, the current curling around their bodies in a natural, practiced rhythm. Alex remained a few steps back, giving them space, watching as they re-entered their world without hesitation. Before disappearing into the reeds, the mother turned once, her gaze steady and calm, holding his for a brief, wordless moment that carried acknowledgement rather than dependence. Then she moved on, guiding her young into the shelter of the river's edge until both shapes blended into the living landscape. The walk back to the station felt quieter than usual, though the jungle sounded the same. Alex resumed his routines, repairing equipment, recording observations, and patrolling nearby trails, yet a subtle shift lingered within him. The memory of those days shared inside the station returned often, not as distraction, but as a gentle reminder that compassion could exist even in the most solitary places. Time moved forward, marked by changing water levels and the steady passage of seasons. He often found himself pausing near the riverbank, listening, not expecting to see them again, but carrying a quiet awareness that their lives continued somewhere beyond his sight. The encounter shaped how he approached his work, deepening his patience and reinforcing the responsibility that came with protecting both the land and its creatures. The jungle, once defined by distance and observation, now felt more interconnected. Each life part of a broader rhythm he was only beginning to understand. In moments of stillness, he reflected on how trust had formed without force or intention, built through simple presence and respect. It reminded him that human and wild did not always stand apart. Sometimes they met briefly, shared space, and moved on, leaving traces that endured. The station returned fully to its usual quiet, but it no longer felt empty. Instead, it carried a sense of continuity, shaped by the knowledge that life had begun and healed within its walls before returning to the river where it belonged. Alex continued his patrols, greeting each day with the same steady focus, aware that the jungle held countless unseen stories unfolding beyond his path. Somewhere along the water, a mother and her growing pup moved through familiar currents, guided by instinct and memory. Their lives carried forward naturally, shaped by the same world that surrounded him. The experience remained not as a dramatic turning point, but as a quiet understanding that connection could exist without permanence. Both had returned to their roles within the jungle, changed in subtle ways, continuing onward within the shared rhythm of the wild.